while we're on the subject of exercise and sort of barriers to exercise and things, we had a really interesting conversation on our online video call last week or whenever it was, about some of the barriers that women face, particularly after giving birth, with pelvic floor muscles. Could you enlighten us on that a little bit?
Yeah.
Because it opened my eyes massively when you sort of told me the origin and then what it can lead to.
Yeah. So, following childbirth, for numerous reasons, and even during pregnancy, women's pelvic floor muscles can become weaker. And that might be, during pregnancy, it might be the pressure of the baby, the pressure of gravity and the baby and the fluid in the womb that's pressing down on the pelvic floor, that can make you a bit more liable to leak urine, and with that comes that sort of feeling of not wanting to do things. It might be not wanting to go out because you'll need to spend a penny more regularly. But postnatally, that can be quite common. I can't remember the statistics offhand, but I think it's somewhere between 35% and 50% of women postnatally may have some sort of urine leak, and therefore many women are able to try and get access to a pelvic health physio to address that problem sort of within sort of about 6 weeks of having their baby. Having said that, I don't know how. It probably depends on where you are as to how much focus there is in that area as to whether you get access. But this can be really important because 80% of stress incontinence can be treated by just contracting your pelvic floor muscles and learning to contract them again. So when I say learning to contract them again, if, for example, you have had pain somewhere, you may your brain may kind of be inhibited in contracting those muscles. Now you might remember that with your knee. So when you had your initial knee injury, probably the physiotherapist would have said, "Oh, you're not quite contracting your quadriceps muscle as you were before."
It's still problematic now, to be honest.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So sometimes that and that will be the same with the pelvic floor muscles. Now,
Okay.
of course, with the pelvic floor muscles, we can't see them, but we can feel them. Having said that, some women don't quite understand how to contract those pelvic floor muscles, and that's where a session with a pelvic floor physiotherapist who can teach you how to contract your muscles can be really helpful, and then you can go away and practice that. Now, the research suggests that you need to be practicing daily and several times daily for about 3 months for that to work. Anecdotally, we hear that many women, that they can get a good result in less time. And once they get the feeling of contracting their muscles, then they can remember to contract them and keep them contracted. Now, so that when they sneeze or whatever, they don't leak, or when they try and run, because again, I think we were talking about activity. If, for example, you leak every time you try and go for a run, that's going to probably put you off going for a run, or playing with the children, jumping on the trampoline and being active. So it may be one reason why women are less physically active than men. We do know that women are less physically active than men, and then that plays out through life. So when women go through the menopause, their muscles get weaker. That's all part of that change. we can see that sometimes in the leg muscles and arm muscles. But that also happens with your pelvic floor muscles. So again, that may be a time where they begin to leak again, and that may be a time where they need to think about contracting their pelvic floor muscles and re-engaging them, because it may be for periods of many years they haven't leaked, and then post-menopausally or during the menopause they may begin to leak again.
So this is sort of a circular problem in that the muscles relax naturally, which makes you perhaps leak urine, which makes you less likely to exercise, which means your muscles become weakened over time. So it's just a circular. Okay.
Yeah, but it going through the menopause, then that's because of the sort of hormonal changes. That's your natural progression, is that women weaken, and they certainly seem to weaken more than the men. So they have, we talk about we talk about their muscle weakness, and we also talk about changes to their bones. But I also spoke about the fact that, so if you're less physically active, then things like your balance become, you're not challenging your balance any longer or as much. So you then become more likely to fall. And obviously when you get older, we know, for example, the second commonest reason for going into a nursing home is because somebody has urinary incontinence.
And do the statistics show that, and also that older women fall more than older men because of this balance thing?
It will be that. That's right.
Yeah.
That women do fall more likely to then fracture their neck or femur. So it's probably a combined thing. They're more likely to fall, but then when they do fall, they're more likely to fracture because of the osteoporosis that comes with getting older. Which
all stems, could potentially all stem from the pelvic floor muscle problem right from the start. So this quite small, relatively speaking, issue can lead to much greater issues later on.
That's right. Difficult to say, because on the way there are probably many complex issues that happen. But these are things that we need to consider.
Absolutely. And this is a really prevalent thing for me, because my wife's nan has just gone into a care home because she had a fall, broke her ankle, and perhaps they're not sure if she'll be coming out. And my nan has also just gone into a care home, partly because of incontinence, and she's in there now. That's where she lives now. Yeah. So it's really both of those things are really what's the word? Oh, crikey! Sorry, hit the mic. Both really prevalent for me right at the moment.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is that this is something that not many people want to talk about. Yeah. Women don't talk about their incontinence. Women think that following childbirth and the fact that they're leaking is just a minor problem. And they don't come forward and try and contact anybody to get any help. It may be because
sort of an acceptance of it. It's like, okay, this is my body now, sort of thing.
That's right. And very often they don't actually even share it with anybody. And more recently, we've had midwives. So midwives, when they see people antenatally, will say to them, how are you today? And the person says, oh yeah, no, all's fine. And they'll do the antenatal examination as they would. They're now beginning to say, have you got any urinary leakage? And they're quite surprised at the number of women who have urinary leakage in antenatally before birth, and that's much more prevalent than they had anticipated.
But they're just not forthcoming with that when you ask, are there any problems?
That's right.
You need to be very specific about the question.
Exactly, and it might be because when somebody comes to talk about their baby, they think that the clinician is focused on the baby. So for that a midwife is focused on the baby. It's just like if you come to see a physiotherapist, you probably tell them about your leg pain and your knee pain, but you won't tell them that you've got postural orthostatic tachycardic syndrome or gastrointestinal problems, which earlier on in our conversation were some of the symptoms that people with Ehlers-Danlos have. So they don't just have one thing. So they may come to see the physiotherapist because they've got knee pain or back pain or chronic pain, but then they don't necessarily think the physiotherapist wants to hear that they've got all these other
which
issues,
could all be linked.
which are all linked, and chronic fatigue, etc. So some of those sorts of things aren't shared. Whereas if you go to see your gynecologist, you'll probably tell them about your gynecological problems, but you might not tell them that you get migraines or whatever. So people choose thinking that the clinician will only want to hear about the one thing. I think that's part of the problem. Yeah.
So the message is, talk more about this.
Absolutely.
Understand it's a problem that
Yeah.
starts from a fairly relatively trivial point, but can lead to much bigger problems down the line.
That's
So
right.
sort it out early if you can.
Yeah, and I mean there are. We reckon that probably there will be children at school also who have urinary leakage that keep very quiet about it, and it might be something that really needs to be addressed earlier on in schools as well, to sort of so that young girls know about it beforehand.